Boomhauer69 here. I was cleaning out some stuff and I came across this thing I had that went to our old laptop that my parents had, which it was an IBM Thinkpad laptop, and I happened to find the old external floppy disk drive that it came with, because the laptop my parents had at the time, it was an old 90s IBM Thinkpad laptop that had both CD-ROM. It had a CD-ROM drive built in it, and then it came with this external floppy disk drive, and this is what the cord looks like. I don't know if you can see that very well with the crappy lighting, but there's what it looks like. And back in the day, it would have a special port on the back of the laptop where you would plug this floppy drive in, and you would have simply a floppy drive to store your information. And when you wanted to put a disk in, you would simply slide the disk into the slot here, and this little button here, this little blue button, would stick out a little bit, and then when you was done using the floppy drive and you wanted to remove the disk, you would press that button in to eject your floppy disk. But there you go. There's what a vintage from the 90s IBM floppy disk drive looks like. I just thought I'd quick make this little video for the people who are into vintage computer technology, computer stuff, like hardware, software, and so forth, and all that stuff. And for people who are the new generation that never used a floppy disk in their life because they wasn't born back when floppy disks were used, and to show the new generation what an IBM floppy disk drive from an IBM ThinkPad laptop looked like, because I know these are pretty rare to find these days, and I like to show the new generation what I grew up with, because I'm 32 years old. I'm now an old man, so. But this back in the day is what I used to store and play games on. These work just like your USB B flash drives and your SD cards. It was simply a format used to store information and stuff and data. You would simply plug this into the IBM laptop port, the proper port on the back of the laptop, or outlet if you want to call it that. You would plug this in. The computer would say, "Oh, hey, floppy disk drive," and then you'd put your floppy disk in there with your information on it. Or if you had a blank floppy disk, you could slide a blank floppy disk with no information on it into the slot and be able to store information on it. Take information off the computer, put it onto the floppy disk, and it would be stored on that floppy disk. And then some games, like I used to play games on floppy disk, so I would simply plug this baby into my parents' IBM ThinkPad laptop, slide in the game disk I wanted to play, and then I would simply load the game onto the computer and play the game. Now, you could, back in the day, store information onto a floppy disk or store it onto the computer. Like, you could slide in a floppy disk, take the information off that floppy disk, store it on the computer's hard drive or hard disk HD, the hard drive, and simply we have that information where you no longer needed the floppy drive, provided that the floppy drive wasn't what they call copyrighted protected or something. I can't remember how they used to refer to it, because there were certain floppy disks that back in the day would have a protection thing on it where you couldn't take the information off of it. You can only just load the information, where it was a read-only disk, as they call it. Because some disks were what they called a read-only disk, where the floppy disk drive would only be able to read the information, not take the information off the disk. And some were not read-only, some were simply, you could rewrite the disk over, what they call reformat your floppy disk, and it would clear all the information, where you could take information off the disk or put new information on it. That's what happens because some floppy disks were what they call read-only, where whatever information was on that disk, you couldn't take it off or on. It just stayed right on that floppy disk, and and the floppy disk drive could only read the information, meaning it could, from the disk, load the information, where if you was to take out a read-only floppy disk while the machine was running the program, it would cause the program to error and say no disk and need disk and stuff. And then there were some floppy disks that were what they call rewritable floppy disks, where you can simply slide a disk in, take the information off in it, store it on the actual computer itself, on the actual computer's hard drive, and then you could take the disk out and run the program, and you wouldn't need that floppy disk anymore. Or you could also take a rewritable floppy disk drive, and if there was any information on that floppy disk drive and you didn't want it on there no more, you could simply delete that information off the floppy disk drive. Now with read-only disk, you could only read what's on there. You couldn't delete anything off that floppy disk. You had to leave what was on that floppy disk. But there you go. There's what a IBM floppy disk drive looks like, and a little bit of what I know about floppy disk drives from the 90s. This is what I used back in the day to basically store information and games and so forth on. It was basically like your video games memory card. If you remember the PlayStations and memory cards, basically that's all it is. If you know what a USB flash drive is or an SD card, this is basically grandpa to those types of formats. This is what people, again, back in the day, used as a storage device to store information and stuff from a computer. If you like more of this content, hit that red subscribe button down below, because Boomhouse69 will be doing more of this sort of content. Again, this video is just a quick little spur of the moment, throw it together, happened to just come across this and thought it'd be kind of funny to make a video about it. So hit that red subscribe button down below if you like this sort of content. And if you want to see more vintage computer stuff, give this video a thumbs up. Or a thumbs down if you didn't like it. Comment your thoughts if you thought it was good or bad or whatever. And please share it. If you really like this video, share it with everybody you know. Thank you all, and hope you all have a good day.